across the empty track. The station was built of stone and had benches on either side of the entrance. The Zhivagos were the only travelers who had got out at Torfiana. They put their luggage down and sat on one of the benches. They were struck by the silence, emptiness, and tidiness of the station. It seemed strange not to be surrounded by a milling, cursing mob. History had not caught up with this remote provincial life. It had not yet relapsed into savagery, as at the capitals. The station nestled in a birch wood. When the train drew in, the cars were plunged into darkness. Now the shadows of the scarcely stirring trees moved lightly over their hands and faces, over the ground and the station walls and roofs, and over the platform with its clean, damp, yellow sand. It was cool in the grove, and the singing of the birds in it had an equally cool sound. Candid and pure as innocence, it pierced and carried through the wood from end to end. Two roads cut through the grove, the railroad and a country road, and both were shaded by branches, which swayed like long sleeves. Suddenly Antonina Alexandrovna's eyes and ears opened. She became aware of everything at once: the ringing bird calls, the pure woodland solitude, and the flowing, unruffled stillness. She had prepared a speech in her mind. "I couldn't believe that we would really get here safely. Your Strelnikov, you know, could quite easily have made a display of magnanimity, and then sent a telegram telling them to arrest all of us as soon as we got off the train. I don't believe in their noble sentiments, my dear, it's all a sham." But quite different words broke from her at sight of the enchanting scene before her. "How lovely!" she cried out. She could not say any more. Tears choked her, and she began to weep. At the sound of her crying, a little old man in a station master's uniform came out and shuffled across to them. Touching the peak of his red-topped cap, he asked politely, "Would the young lady like a sedative? We have some in the station medicine chest." "It's nothing. Thank you. She'll be all right in a moment," said Alexander Alexandrovich. "It's the anxiety and the worry of the journey that does it, it's well known. And then this African heat, which is so rare in this latitude. Not to mention the events in Yurii. We saw the fire from the train as we went by. You're from Central Russia, if I'm not mistaken? From the very heart of it? From Moscow? Little wonder, then, that the ladies' nerves are upset. They say there isn't a stone left standing. Not quite as bad as that. People exaggerate. But we've certainly seen plenty. This is my daughter, and that's her husband, and that's their little boy. And this is his nurse, Nyasha. How do you do? How do you do? Delighted. I was rather expecting you." Anfim Efanovich Samadovayatov telephoned from Sakma. "Dr. Zhivago is coming with his family from Moscow," he said, "and would I please give them every possible assistance." "So that's who you are, am I right?" "No, Dr. Zhivago is my son-in-law, there he is. I'm a professor of agronomy and my name is Gromeko." "Pardon me. My mistake. I am very glad to make your acquaintance. So you know Samdeviatov? Who doesn't know him, the wonder worker? I don't know what we would have done without him, we'd have all been dead long ago." "Give them every possible assistance," he said. "Very good," I said. "I promised I would. So if you need a horse or anything." "Where are you bound for?" "We want to get to Varykino." "Is it far from here?" "Varykino. That's why I've kept wondering whom your daughter reminds me of." "So it's Varykino you want. That explains everything. Old man Kruger and I built this road together. I'll see to the horse right away, I'll call one of the men and we'll see. About a cart. Don't it? Take these things into the waiting room for the time being. And how about a horse? Run over to the tea room and see what can be done. Bacchus was hanging around here this morning. See if he's still there. Tell them 4 passengers for very kino. They're new arrivals. They've got hardly any luggage, tell them. And make it snappy. And now, lady, may I give you a piece of fatherly advice? I purposely didn't ask you how closely you were related to Ivan Ernestovich. Be very careful what you say about it. You can't talk too much with everyone in times like these. At the mention of Bacchus the travelers looked at each other in amazement. They remembered Anna Ivanovna's tales about the fabulous blacksmith who had made himself an indestructible set of iron guts and the many other local legends she had told them. 8. The horse was a white mare that had recently foaled, and their driver was a lop-eared old man with dishevelled white hair. For some reason everything about him was white. His new birch bark shoes had not had time to grow dark, and his linen shirt and trousers had faded with age. The foal, with a short, curly mane, and black as night, like a painted toy, ran after its mother kicking out its soft-boned legs. The travelers clung to the sides of the cart as it jolted over the ruts. Their hearts were at peace. Their dream was coming true, they were almost at the end of their journey. The last hours of the clear day lingered generously, as though eager to prolong its splendor. Their way led sometimes through woods and sometimes across open fields. Driving through the forest, each time they were jolted violently when the cart wheel hit a root. They scowled, hunched their shoulders, and pressed close to each other. Every time they came out into the open, where the space seemed exuberantly to toss its cap into the air, they sat up straight and more comfortably, and breathed sighs of relief. It was hilly country. The hills, as always, had their own expression. They rose huge and dark in the distance, like proud shadows, silently scrutinizing the travelers. A comfortingly rosy light followed them across the fields, soothing them and giving them hope. They liked and they marveled at everything. Most of all at the unceasing chatter of their quaint old driver, in whose speech archaic Russian forms, Tartar idioms, and local oddities of diction were punctuated with obscurities of his own invention. Whenever the foal lagged behind, the mare stopped and waited. The foal would catch up with her in graceful, wave-like bounds, and then, walking up to the cart clumsily on its long legs set too close together, it would stretch its long neck and push its tiny head under the shaft to nurse. But I don't understand. Antonina Alexandrovna shouted to her husband, slowly, for fear that her teeth, which chattered with the shaking of the cart, should bite off the tip of her tongue at some sudden jolt. Can this be the same Bacchus that mother used to tell us about? You remember all that stuff about the blacksmith who was disemboweled in a fight and made himself a set of new bowels? Bacchus Iron Belly. Of course I know it's only a story, but can it have been told about him? Is he the same Bacchus? No, of course not. To begin with, as you say, it's only a story, a legend, and then mother told us that even the legend was over 100 years old when she heard it. But don't talk so loud. You don't want to hurt the old man's feelings. He won't hear anything, he's deaf. And if he did, he wouldn't understand, he's not quite right in the head. Hey, thichminhchau. The old man shouted to his horse, addressing it for some reason by a male name and patronymic, although he knew as well as his passengers did that it was a mare. Curse this heat! Like unto the children of Abraham in the Persian furnace. Gee up, you unredeemed devil! It's you I'm talking to, you bungler! Sometimes, he would suddenly burst into snatches of old songs, composed in the former Kruger factories. Goodbye, main office, goodbye, shaft, and mine. The master's bread is stale to me and I am sick of drinking water. A swan is swimming past the shores, he makes furrows in the water. It isn't wine that makes me sway. It is because Vanya is going into the army. But I, Masha, I won't blunder. But I, Masha, am not a fool, I'll go to the town of Saliaba, and work for Senteti Urka. You godforsaken beast. Look at that carrion. I give her the whip and she gives me the lip. Fedia, are you making up your mind to go? That forest, it's called the taiga, there's no end to it. And there's no end of peasant folk inside it, the forest brotherhood is there. Fedia, have you stopped again, you devil? All at once he turned and looked Antonina Alexandrovna straight in the eye. Do you really think, young woman, that I didn't know who you were? You're simple-minded, young lady, that I can see. May I fall dead if I didn't recognize you. Certainly I recognized you. Couldn't believe my eyes, you're the living image of Grigov. This was his version of Kruger's name. You wouldn't be his granddaughter, would you? Who could tell a Grigov if not me? I've spent my life working for him. Did every kind of job for him. Worked in the mines as a woodman, and at the winch above ground, and in the stables. Gee up, get a move on. Stopped again, like she had no legs. Angels in China. Can't you hear I'm talking to you? Well now, you were asking if I'm that same blacksmith Bacchus. What a simpleton you are, little mother, such big eyes and a lady, but a fool. Your Bacchus, he was called Postanogov Iron Belly, he went to his grave more than 50 years ago. But my name is Mikhanashin. Our Christian names are the same but our surnames are different. Little by little, the old man told them in his own words what they had already heard from Samdeviatov about the mikulitsyns. He called them Mikulich and Mikulikna. He spoke of the latter as the manager's second wife and of his first wife as an angel, a white cherub. When he came to the partisan leader, Librius, and learned that his fame had not yet reached Moscow and that the Forest Brotherhood was unknown there, he could hardly believe it. They haven't heard? They haven't heard of Comrade Forrester? Angels in China, then what has Moscow got ears for? Evening was coming on. Their shadows, growing longer and longer, ran ahead of them. They were driving through a flat, treeless stretch. Here and there, in lonely clusters, stood tall stringy stalks of goosefoot, of willow herb and thistle tipped with flowering tufts. Their ghost-like contours, widely spaced, loomed like mounted guards keeping watch over the plain. Far ahead of them, the plain abutted a tall range of hills. They stood across the road like a wall, beyond which there was perhaps a ravine or a stream. It was as though the sky over there were enclosed by a rampart, and the road were leading to its gate. A long, one-story white house emerged at the top of the ridge. "See the lookout up on the hill?" said Bacchus. "That's where your Mikulich and Mikulikna live. And down below there's a gully, Shutma it's called." 2 rifle shots rang out from the hills, followed by rolling echoes. "What's that? It wouldn't be partisans shooting at us, would it, little grandfather?" "Bless you, no. Partisans. That's Spanik scaring the wolves away in the Shutma." 9. Their first meeting with the mikulitsyns took place in the yard of the manager's house. It was a painful scene that began in silence and became noisily confused. Elena Proklovna was coming home across the yard from a walk in the woods. The rays of the setting sun, as golden as her golden hair, trailed behind her from tree to tree through the wood. She wore a light summer dress. She was hot from her walk and was wiping her face with her handkerchief. Her straw hat hung at her back from an elastic around her bare throat. Her husband was coming to meet her from the ravine. He had just climbed up from it with his gun, which he meant to clean because he had noticed that there was something wrong with it. Suddenly, into this peaceful setting Bacchus rolled up smartly with a loud clatter of cartwheels over the cobbles, bringing his surprise. The passengers got out, and Alexander Alexandrovich, hemming and hawing and taking off and putting on his hat, began to explain.